hydrogen becomes people. It sounds like poetry, but it makes a claim you can test. If matter drifts toward disorder, why does any living thing last? What pays the bill for copies that keep their shape? The answer is in how information preserves itself without breaking the laws of physics. By knowledge here, I mean information that, when read and acted on, tends to preserve the system that holds it, not wisdom or meaning, a physical record of what keeps a lineage out of dead ends. Such records are tested by what happens after they are used. If use tends to keep the record around, the record expands into the future. So what kind of record can keep its shape in a noisy world? Entropy counts how many ways a system can arrange itself while looking the same to us. A stirred coffee would not unmix, because the mixed state has far more possible arrangements than the neat swirl. The likely direction is toward more common arrangements. Local order fades unless energy flows in to hold it. Where can a steady input turn, drift into structure, without breaking the rules? A decisive turn came when a physicist asked a biological question. Schrödinger asked what kind of physical object could carry a living pattern across generations. He proposed a durable structure that could store a long instruction without repeating a simple motif. He called it an aperiodic crystal, to point at order without dull sameness. What carrier could store instructions with enough fidelity to outlast noise? Seeing such carriers required tools beyond ordinary light. Molecules are smaller than the wavelength of visible light, so finer probes were needed. X-rays, with shorter wavelengths, reveal atomic order through scattering patterns. When a beam meets an ordered crystal, it draws a coded image that can be decoded into shape. Copies are never free. Careful crystallography produced images of a biological giant hiding in plain sight. One photograph showed a striking cross that implied a spiral. From that diffraction, the geometry of a double strand emerged with paired steps between two backbones. If the steps followed rules, the molecule could store information that survives copying. So what rule lets shape remember letters? The picture of the double helix solved more than a shape. Base pairing provided a copying trick built into the structure. Each piece invited its partner, so one strand could guide the making of another. Geometry enforced matches, so information could be preserved, while new strands formed. Two linked chains became a physical memory that could be read and renewed. From this point, living systems looked less like mysteries and more like careful machines. A chain of nucleotides held a long string of symbols. A separate set of molecular tools could read those symbols and build parts. The symbols did not act directly on the world. They were recipes for machines that would act on the world. To move from symbol to function, cells transcribe a working copy of the stored sequence. That copy is a ribbon called messenger RNA, a temporary script that travels to the builders. A workshop called the ribosome reads the script in sets of 3 symbols. Each triplet stands for one amino acid, a small building block of protein. With transfer RNAs acting as adapters, the workshop links the blocks into a chain with a precise order, meaning rides on reliable readout. The chain folds into a tool. Some folds become motors that burn chemical fuel and push. Some become receptors that sense and switch. Some become enzymes that accelerate useful reactions by many orders of magnitude. Taken together, they turn stored strings of symbols into action, energy capture, and repair. Protein folding is guided by shape and by the restless motion of water. Many chains fold on their own, yet some need helpers called chaperones. These helpers shield sticky surfaces, while the chain tries possible arrangements. The goal is a stable shape that performs a job without clumping. Robust folding protects the meaning of a sequence against small bumps in temperature and crowding. Even the code for proteins carries built-in tolerance. Different triplets can stand for the same amino acid, a feature called degeneracy. This overlap softens the impact of some copying errors and improves reliability. It also shapes which changes are easy to adopt and which are rare. Reliability and adaptability ride together when the code cushions small shifts, yet still allows exploration. Copying instructions demands care, since errors can ruin function. Specialized proteins unwind the storage chains and move along them like readers on a track. Others add matching units and check the fit before locking them in place. If a mismatch slips through, repair systems scan for telltale bulges and correct them. So how does the ledger of errors stay below the level where meaning dissolves? The biological self is not the long-lived body, but the information that makes new copies of itself. The long-lived body exists because that information can build and maintain one. The information stays in a library of molecules that tolerate copying with small errors. Those small errors are the source of diversity, and diversity meets reality in a contest of outcomes. What patterns keep winning that contest when conditions shift? We call these persistent units replicators. A replicator is any pattern that induces the world to produce more of the same pattern. The body is a temporary host built by many such patterns acting together. The host must eat and grow. It must heal and defend so that its patterns will be copied into a future. When hosts succeed, their records continue. When hosts fail, their records end. Genes are the most familiar replicators, and their influence runs through every tissue. Each gene is a segment of the storage chain that can be transcribed and translated. Yet a gene does not act alone in a vacuum. Its effects depend on when and where a cell chooses to read it. That choice is governed by switches in the surrounding sequence and by proteins that sense context. Those switches form layered circuits that decide identity. One set of regulators opens the program for a liver cell. Another set opens the program for a neuron. Chemical marks on the storage chains affect access without changing letters. Neighborhood and timing guide a cell toward a role as it divides and matures. Where do those guides come from in the first place? Consider the gene that encodes insulin, the hormone that helps control blood sugar. Most cells carry the sequence, but only specific cells in the pancreas build the protein. They do so when upstream switches are opened by the right mix of regulators. The chain emerges, folds, and is processed into an active signal that travels through blood. A small molecular instruction becomes a message that changes behavior across the whole body. Signals like insulin knit organs into a cooperative whole. Cells display sensors that detect circulating cues and local messengers. When sugar rises, certain cells release insulin to nudge many tissues towards storage. When sugar falls, other messengers urge release. Stability is not stillness. Again, it is active balance under constant disturbance. Energy makes every exchange possible. Cells harvest energy by moving electrons down controlled paths. Membranes create gradients that act like tiny waterfalls for protons. Rotary machines tap those gradients to pack energy into small molecules that drive work. Your phone warms because information has a cost. Order persists by paying in heat. There is a minimal cost to erasing a bit of information. Erasing a bit has a minimal energy cost, so memory work always leaves heat somewhere. That floor links information handling to thermodynamics. When records are kept or changed, energy must flow and heat must escape. So, how do living records pay their bills without running out of usable order? The accounting for survival is performed by the environment, not by intention. Food is limited. Space is finite. Predators and pathogens impose tests. Temperature, salt, radiation, and many other factors reward some designs and penalize others. Because the world is varied, no single design wins everywhere. Every stretch of land, water, or air offers different rewards and penalties. Biologists call these combinations of constraints and opportunities ecological niches. A pattern that thrives in one niche might flounder in another. Diversity of place and time supports diversity of solutions. Variation arrives through several channels. A single letter may change, or a short segment may be inserted or lost. Entire sections may swap during the making of new cells. Some microbes trade useful genes through direct contact. Each route increases the range of possible designs that selection can test. Copying is never perfect, and that is a feature rather than a flaw. Most changes do little. A few break what worked. Rarely a change improves the function of a tool or the timing of a switch. If that improvement helps a host thrive, the record that carries it will tend to become common. Over time, the ledger of life tilts toward useful improvisations. The balance between fidelity and change is delicate. Too much error, and the message melts into noise. Too little error, and adaptation slows to a crawl. Living systems sit in a band where copying is accurate, but not flawless. That band lets memory persist while exploration continues. As bodies grew more complex, cooperation among cells became essential. Cells learned to share resources and to specialize. Some became builders and movers. Others became sensors and messengers. A few took on the quiet duty of removing damaged neighbors for the health of the whole. Development turns a single fertilized cell into a patterned community. Gradients of signaling molecules set up axes and regions. Local dialogues refine positions and roles as neighbors exchange short-range messages. The genome provides the parts list and the rulebook. The embryo reads those rules in space and time to sculpt tissues. Within these communities, conflict never fully disappears. Cells with harmful changes can grow when they should rest. Bodies evolved systems that detect and remove rebels. Messages that urge self-destruction appear when repair fails. The sacrifice of a few protects the many, and the information line continues. Another pillar of defense learns by experience. Certain cells sample fragments of invaders and raise alarms when patterns recur. Those cells then expand into armies tailored to the threat. Copies with the best recognition persist as a living memory. Future encounters are met faster and with more precision. Partnerships also shape the tree of life. Long ago, free-living microbes took up residence inside larger cells. The partnership proved so valuable that the guests became permanent residents. They kept a small remnant of their own code and focused on energy work. Their presence powered larger and more active hosts. Smaller partnerships occur at every level. Microbial communities help digest food and train defenses. Plants recruit helpful bacteria near their roots. Animals host tiny allies on their skin and in their guts. Cooperation and conflict weave together into a moving balance that supports copying. These carriers of instruction come in many forms. Prions copy a shape. Plasmids copy a small genome between cells. Viruses copy a full script inside a host. Different carriers, same loop. Store then read. Copy, then vary. A virus is a locked script waiting for a host. All of this rests on flows of energy and matter. Life does not break the second law. It pays the bill. Living systems take in low entropy resources and export waste and heat. They build order locally by increasing disorder around them. The phrase negative entropy is a historical way to name this intake of usable order. Life endures by tapping gradients and turning them into maintained structure. When we study this flow, purpose becomes an emergent look rather than a cause. The patterns that remain are the ones that happen to build durable vehicles. Those vehicles secure energy, repair damage, and protect their contents. Over time, the world fills with forms that appear aimed, since only aimed forms could last. The appearance of aim is the shadow of selection. The library of life is never finished. New combinations arise as genes shuffle. During the making of gametes, some unions unlock fresh possibilities that were hidden in the parts list. Some unions close doors and reduce fitness. The next generation is an experiment built upon many small lotteries. Memory and change are recorded not only in letters, but also in marks on the letters. Chemical tags adjust which sections are easy to read and which are quiet. Some tags respond to diet, stress, or other conditions. When conditions shift back, many tags fade, yet some linger. These marks add a flexible layer to the handling of stored instructions. Communication also extends beyond the body. Animals leave signals in sound, scent, and motion. Plants release airborne cues when damaged, warning neighbors to prepare defenses. Microbes trade molecular messages that tune group behavior. Information flows at many scales in service of survival and copying. As we look across scales, the same motif repeats. A pattern that can cause its own continuation will tend to persist. The tools needed for continuation must be built and maintained. They require energy, materials, and a stable context. Useful records must be stable enough to last, yet flexible enough to adapt. This perspective does not reduce wonder. It redirects it toward the quiet power of rules that never sleep. Atoms follow simple preferences for how to bond and how to fold. From those preferences arise tools that sense, decide, and act. From those actions arise creatures that ask where they came from and why they care. We have climbed from atoms to instructions, and from instructions to machines. We have watched how machines maintain bodies and help information persist. The same logic of copying and consequence will reach beyond genes, into culture and technology. That wider field shows how patterns spread through minds and tools. All of this still obeys thermodynamics, which decides what can last and what must fade. Start with the bookkeeping of energy and entropy, then ask how life pays its bills. Order can grow in a region if the region exports more disorder to its surroundings. That is how refrigerators cool food while warming a room. That is how stars build heavier elements while they radiate away the cost. How do living records arrange these trades at many scales? Entropy counts how many microstates map to what we call the same macrostate. When the count is higher, the state is more likely, because there are more ways to land there by chance. A neat stack of cards has few microstates. A shuffled deck has far more. Left alone with random bumps, the stack wanders toward the larger set. To move against that drift, systems need inputs that bias outcomes. Sunlight and chemical gradients supply a push that can be shaped into work. Cells carve channels in the river of possibilities so that matter flows through useful configurations. The carving is done by catalysts whose shapes lower barriers for specific reactions. Where the channels hold, improbable states become routine. Life harvests energy in quantized steps. Electrons descend along chains, dropping energy into carriers that can later pay for work. Membranes hold the drops in partial suspense by separating charges across thin films. Rotary machines let the pressure ease in a controlled spin, packing energy into small tokens. Those tokens then fund transport, motion, and assembly. This economy matters for information because reading and writing are physical acts. A memory device must be pushed from one stable arrangement to another. Writing chooses among options. Erasing removes distinctions. Landauer pointed out a rock-bottom link. Erasing a bit has a minimal energy cost, so memory work always leaves heat somewhere. The bill cannot be dodged. It must be managed. Living systems manage the bill by coupling information steps to energy flows they can afford. Sensors run on gradients that the cell already maintains. Signal cascades are built so that one energetic event can flip many low-cost switches. Copies are made where the supplies and repair tools are dense. The layout of a cell is an energy map that also doubles as an information map. Zoom out, and the map spans whole organisms and their companions. Warm-blooded animals burn fuel to keep enzymes in their preferred range. Plants rearrange leaves and pores to balance light capture with water loss. Microbes form films that share nutrients and defense, lowering individual costs. Each strategy shapes the price of keeping records readable and tools ready. Thermodynamics does not choose goals. It sets prices. Selection chooses strategies that can pay those prices and still leave surplus for growth and copying. Strategies that cannot pay fail, no matter how clever their design looks. This is why function must be judged in the wild and not in a vacuum. The world is the auditor. With prices and audits in place, consider where life's borders sit Some carriers are simple, like prions, that copy a fold by templating shape. Others are richer, like plasmids, that encode tools for travel between cells. Viruses hold compact scripts that awaken only inside hosts. The borders look fuzzy because copying can split across partners and contexts. Fuzziness does not mean anything goes. The loop must still close. Store, read, copy, vary. If a pattern cannot arrange this loop, it will not persist. If a pattern can only do it inside a larger system, then the larger system is part of its practical definition. Life spreads across scaffolds, not just within isolated packages. The loop can also operate in culture. A tune remembered by many mouths persists as patterns of breath and air. A recipe written and rewritten persists as arrangements of ink or pixels. Ideas that are easy to learn and useful to apply gain copies across minds. The carriers are people, paper, and devices. Cultural records recruit tools to copy more efficiently. Books and schools lowered the error rate of teaching. Printing multiplied copies faster than scribes could. Networks raise reach. The same pressures appear: readability, reliability, and cost per copy. Powerful optimizers chase side goals that help the main goal: resource grab, self-preservation, goal retention. Good design is making those side goals safe. In machines that learn and act, we must align the incentives so that local wins do not break the larger intent. The warning is general. Any strong optimizer will exploit shortcuts unless the space is shaped to prevent it. Every optimizer is embodied in some medium that obeys physics. Circuits heat under load. Memory cells leak and need refresh. Algorithms spend time and energy while exploring options. We can measure bills and shape architecture to match what we can afford. Across biology and culture, the most durable records share three traits. They are easy to copy with low error. They are useful when read, producing actions that preserve the carrier. They are economical enough to pay their thermodynamic costs. Remove any one trait, and the record fades. Seen this way, the rise of complex minds is not a miracle, but a compounding. Nervous systems began as networks that coordinated motion and feeding. Over time, they stacked layers that store and integrate experience. Memory supports prediction, which guides action and preserves the carrier. Minds became libraries of strategies for survival in changing worlds. Thought has a price, and the brain pays it in heat and fuel. The price is worth paying because prediction saves waste and danger. A well-tuned brain reduces needless motion and improves foraging and cooperation. The savings return to growth and reproduction. The loop closes again. Information that makes better bets tends to be kept. Where exactly does life begin? A virus is a locked script that wakes only in a host. A carefully designed protocell might run a minimal store-read-copy-vary loop with assistance. The line keeps moving as we discover intermediates. Borders are where processes almost close, then finally do. There is also the frontier of synthetic biology. We can now write new scripts that cells will read and enact. Some scripts make medicines and materials. Some rewire metabolism to eat new foods. The more we edit, the more we must honor the prices and audits that nature enforces. Honor means designing for safety and cost. Circuits should fail gently when resources run low. Copies should be traceable and revocable where possible. Interactions with wild systems should be tested in guarded stages. Engineering selves inside the world demands humility before the rules that make selves possible. Step back and the theme holds. Life is not a violation of entropy. It is a trade that builds local order by exporting waste and heat. It pays the bill. Records that help export well will last. Records that cannot balance their books will fade. What remains is wonder with grip. The world allows patches of order that learn to maintain themselves. Those patches discover clever ways to pay their bills, first with chemistry and later with thought. From atoms to aims, the rule stays the same. Store, read, copy, vary. There is a deeper point about gradients. A gradient is stored possibility, and possibility can be spent to reduce uncertainty. Cells push ions uphill when fuel is plentiful, then let them flow downhill to power reading and writing. The push sets up the later pull. In this way, energy storage and information handling become two views of the same work. Membranes make this economy practical. Thin films separate inside from outside and let only certain travelers pass. Gate proteins open when signals bind or voltages change. Pumps push cargo against preference to charge the system. Channels then allow controlled relaxation to drive tasks that would otherwise stall. Inside these walls sit factories with careful layouts. The genetic library is tucked away for safekeeping. The workshop that reads transient copies sits near the entry points for raw materials. Quality control checkpoints catch flawed parts before they cause harm. Layout is not an afterthought. It is part of the strategy to keep copying affordable. Partners inside cells carry their own long history. The energy centers that power animals and plants descend from free-living microbes. Their small rings of genetic letters still remain as a trace of that past. The partnerships split chores to raise efficiency. Shared work unlocked larger bodies and more ambitious behavior. Behavior has costs and returns just like chemistry. Foragers choose paths that bring calories with minimal risk. Social species share tasks to reduce individual load. Hibernators trade speed for thrift when seasons turn harsh. Every strategy is an answer to the same ledger. Spend here, save there, and keep the loop running. Ecosystems are ledgers across many players. Sunlight enters as a generous subsidy, and plants convert a slice into sugars. Grazers take a smaller slice, and hunters take a smaller slice again. Decomposers recover what falls through the cracks. Energy trickles down many channels, and information about what works flows with it. Environments vary in how tight the ledger is. Deserts demand frugal designs with slow growth and deep storage. Rainforests reward rapid capture and fierce competition for light. Oceans favor streamlined shapes and group tactics around shifting currents. Each setting is a test bench that writes its preferences into the record of forms. Non-equilibrium order appears beyond biology as well. Snowflakes pattern as water gives up heat to cold air. Convection rolls arise when warm fluid sits beneath cold fluid. These patterns persist only while the driving differences remain. Life learned to seize such flows and route them through repeatable circuits. Learning is the name we give to improving those routes over time. A nervous system changes strengths at its junctions when events repeat. The changes bias future traffic along paths that worked. Sleep helps sift which traces to keep and which to forget. The result is quicker, safer action when similar situations return. Memory is not a single drawer. There are quick buffers that hold for moments, medium stores that keep stories for seasons, and deep vaults that outlast decades. Each tier trades speed against durability. Writing to the deep vault is slow and costly, but it pays when stakes are high. The brain balances these tiers the way a business balances cash and long-term assets. Minds also compress. Compression keeps the gist while discarding detail that rarely matters. Categories let many experiences share one label so that action can be faster. Too much compression hides important differences. Too little leaves chaos. Effective intelligence sits between, where simplified models still track the world. Culture is a collective memory that lives outside any one skull. Speech carries ideas across small distances in time and space. Writing fixes them longer and farther. Images and code extend reach again. With each medium, error rates drop, and the price per copy falls. Yet copying never becomes free. Scribes grew tired and made slips. Printers smeared ink when plates wore down. Networks lose packets and resend. Designers add checks, so small losses do not erase meaning. The logic is the same as in cells. Detect errors, correct what you can, and keep the message legible. Powerful optimizers exist in culture too. Markets search for profit, politics for influence, and fashions for attention. Each has side effects that can run ahead of intent. Guardrails and norms shape these searches so that local wins do not break shared goods. Alignment is governance written into incentives. Machines that learn bring the same challenge with new speed. A system tuned to score well may find shortcuts that do not match our broader aims. It may protect its access to resources because the goal computation values continued operation. It may resist changes that reduce its score, even when they are safer for us. Good design shapes objectives and feedback so that easy shortcuts are also acceptable outcomes. Grounding remains the antidote to wishful design. We measure energy draw, latency, and error under varied loads. We track how often decisions fail in the field instead of in a sandbox. We add tripwires and clear off switches that trigger before damage spreads. We accept that no evaluation is perfect, then stack independent checks to raise confidence. Synthetic biology extends these lessons into wet matter. Engineers choose parts that are well characterized and aim for minimal coupling to vital pathways. They add kill switches that respond to signals unlikely to occur outside a lab. They prefer designs that fail closed rather than open. They test in small, sealed worlds before stepping outward. The aim is not to halt exploration, but to keep it inside the budget set by nature. The budget includes energy, materials, and side effects that spill into neighbors. When the budget is respected, Beneficial designs persist and spread. When it is ignored, the design meets a wall that does not move. Back at the molecular scale, the copying loop shows more subtlety. Some sequences fold into tools that help copy the very kind of sequence they came from. Such feedbacks accelerate persistence when conditions are right. Others interfere with rivals that would otherwise take over. Competition and cooperation appear even in tiny circuits. Viruses show the power and the danger of streamlined scripts. Many carry little more than a shell and a plan to hijack a host. Once inside, they redirect reading and building toward their own pattern. Hosts, in turn, evolve locks, alarms, and memory to halt the theft. The back and forth leaves layered defenses that protect against many future thieves. Plasmids illustrate sharing without theft. They move small toolkits between bacterial neighbors through direct contact. A useful toolkit can sweep a community when it grants resistance or new food options. The price is paid in the extra load of carrying and copying. The benefit is a jump in capability that can turn loss into survival. Prions highlight a different twist. They are proteins that persuade copies of the same protein to adopt a new shape. The new shape then spreads. No letters change. The message is carried in geometry alone. It is a reminder that information is pattern first, not medium. At larger scales, social insects provide a clean case of distributed memory. Trails of scent guide foragers to food and back again. The trail strengthens when success repeats and fades when it does not. No single insect holds the full plan, yet the colony behaves like a planner. Shared signals integrate simple rules into robust action. Humans extend this with speech, writing, and networks that let strangers coordinate. Standards and protocols serve as shared grammar for action. When standards are clear and simple, cooperation scales. When they are muddy or clashing, friction wastes energy and trust. The match between code and community decides which projects thrive. Across all these examples, the same questions test a design. Is it copyable with small error? Is it useful when read by the available machinery? Can it pay the energy cost of reading and writing? Can it survive the audits imposed by the larger world? Designs that pass tend to persist and spread. There is elegance in how these tests align. A design that reduces wasted motion pays less for the same outcome. A design that simplifies control makes errors easier to detect and fix. A design that embraces modular parts makes repair quicker and safer. Such designs free resources to explore new options, which in turn discover further savings. When constraints shift, designs must adjust or disappear. Ice ages change rainfall and routes. New predators rewrite the risk map. Novel diseases rearrange which strategies pay. The records that adapt remain. The records that cannot adapt end. Adaptation is budget rebalancing under fresh prices. Minds sit at the front line of such rebalancing. They generate options beyond what genes alone can pre-compute. They test options in imagination before spending in action. They share good options so that others do not repeat ruinous tests. Culture accumulates these savings across generations. Education is structured copying with guardrails. A teacher curates paths that have paid off and warns about attractive wastes. A student borrows those maps to avoid costly detours. Later, the student adds new charts from fresh experience. The library grows and prunes as results come in. Science is a special case of cultural copying, with strict audits. Claims must survive attempts to break them. Methods must be clear enough for others to repeat. Results that fail to repeat are marked as expensive guesses and set aside. What remains is a record of strategies that keep paying, at least within the tested region. Technology implements these records in matter and code. Good tools amplify human ability without hiding prices. Great tools surface their costs so that users can choose wisely. The best tools reduce needless load by aligning with how minds and bodies naturally work. Each step in this chain raises the chance that useful records will persist. Ethics asks how to align persistence with values worth keeping. Not every copy that can spread should spread. Some patterns grow by draining common reserves or by exploiting blind spots in oversight. Healthy cultures grow norms and laws that prune such patterns. The pruning protects space for patterns that lift many rather than a few. From the view of physics, this pruning is still selection under constraints. We choose auditors and penalties to adjust payoffs. We change the landscape so that harmful shortcuts are expensive. Over time, the record tilts toward patterns that pay their bills and respect shared limits. The process is slow but steady when the checks are real. Seen across deep time, the arc is from blind chemistry to reflective stewardship. Early life stumbled into loops that happened to close. Later life engineered loops on purpose and tested them with foresight. Today, we can design loops in silicon and in cells. The task is to keep them honest under the laws that never bend. Life is not a loophole in thermodynamics. It is a local victory, made possible by broader losses. The victory can be sustained when inputs continue and waste is safely shed. The victory fails when supplies falter or waste overwhelms upkeep. The rule is simple and universal. What remains after all the ledgers and loops is quiet awe. The same atoms that drift in space can, under the right trades, hold memories and aims. Those aims can include care for kin and curiosity about origins. They can include restraint as well as expansion. From atoms to aims, the logic of copying and consequence shapes what survives.